Have you ever thought about how fragile even the biggest companies can be? How does a business that once supplied one out of every 4 wind blades outside China suddenly fall into bankruptcy? Think about it. In 2024 alone, TPI Composites generated $1.3 billion in net sales, produced 6,525 blades, and was trusted by the biggest names in renewable energy, GE Vernova, Vestas, and Nordex. And yet, just a year later, the company filed for Chapter 11, carrying more than $600 million in debt. So here's the big question. How does a global renewable energy champion collapse so fast, right in the middle of a worldwide push for clean power? This is not just a story about one company. It's a story about the hidden dangers behind the renewable energy boom. Shifting government policies, unforgiving contracts, and the razor-thin margins that can destroy even a market leader. And if you listen carefully, it's also a lesson for every business, whether you're in energy, technology, or manufacturing, about the risks of growing too big, too fast, without securing a safety net. Stay with me until the end, because what happened to TPI could happen in any industry. And by the end of this story, you'll understand how even the strongest companies can be blown off course. To really understand how TPI reached the top, we need to go back to the beginning. The story starts in 1968, not in wind energy, but in a small town in Rhode Island. Back then, TPI stood for Tillotson Pearson Incorporated, and its specialty? Building sailboats and high-performance marine composites. For decades, they were known in the marine industry for innovation, designing light, durable, and fast vessels. But like many great companies, the leadership saw a shift in the horizon. By the late 1990s, the real growth opportunity wasn't on the ocean but in the sky, capturing the power of the wind. So in 1999, TPI made a bold pivot. By 2001, they were producing their first composite wind blades. And this move changed everything. From that point forward, TPI was no longer just a boat maker. It was transforming into one of the world's largest independent wind blade manufacturers. Expansion came quickly. In 2002, the first international plant opened in Ciudad Juarez, Mexico, a strategic spot close to U.S. wind farms. By 2008, a major U.S. facility in Newton, Iowa, came online to serve the growing Midwestern market. That same year, TPI expanded to China, building plants in Taikong and later Dafeng and Yangzhou. In 2012, they set up in Izmir, Turkey, eventually opening a second plant there in 2015. And by 2020, they planted roots in Chennai, India, tapping into one of the fastest-growing wind markets in the world. This global footprint gave TPI something unique: the ability to be close to its customers, reducing logistics costs and embedding itself in local markets. By the mid-2000s, TPI wasn't just a supplier, it was a strategic partner for global giants. Companies like Vestas, GE Vernova, and Nordex didn't just buy blades. They collaborated with TPI on design, prototyping, and scaling up manufacturing. And in 2016, the company went public on NASDAQ under the ticker TPIC. The IPO provided fresh capital, fueling even more growth. At its height, TPI employed over 14,000 people worldwide and operated a staggering 6 million square feet of manufacturing space. For a moment, it looked unstoppable. A company that started with boats had turned into a key player in the clean energy revolution. But as history often reminds us, rapid growth comes with hidden risks. Risks that would later shake TPI to its core. TPI's rise was fast, but the fall, it was even faster. The first cracks appeared after 2020. For years, the company had ridden the wave of U.S. government incentives like the Production Tax Credit, the PTC. Wind farm developers raced to build before the credit expired, and TPI's factories ran at full tilt. But once that wave ended, the industry crashed into what insiders call a demand vacuum. By 2021, costs were rising everywhere: fiberglass, resin, logistics, and TPI was locked into fixed-price contracts. That meant even as materials doubled, TPI couldn't pass those costs on. Margins were squeezed to the breaking point. Then came the policy whiplash. In 2022, the Inflation Reduction Act promised long-term benefits, but ironically, it killed near-term demand. Why rush to build now when developers could wait for better incentives later? And in July 2025, The so-called One Big Beautiful Bill Act accelerated the phase-out of credits entirely, throwing the industry into confusion. Suddenly, OEMs hesitated to commit to long-term deals. But policy wasn't the only problem. Operations began to unravel. In Turkey, things spiraled. Hyperinflation, a protracted labor strike, and the loss of every major customer contract turned the plants there into dead weight. In Mexico, new blade models brought production delays and quality issues. Customers started demanding liquidated damages, even withholding payments as penalties. For TPI, it was like bleeding cash every single day. And in China, relentless competition from state-subsidized manufacturers forced TPI to retreat completely by early 2023. Years of investment wiped away, even contracts turned against them. In the past, TPI enjoyed take-or-pay guarantees, minimum purchase commitments from customers. But OEMs changed the rules. Without those protections, TPI bore the full risk when demand fell. The numbers tell the story. $210 million net loss in 2024. For shareholders, confidence evaporated. For lenders, the red flags were undeniable. The giant of wind energy was now caught in a storm it could no longer control. Desperate, TPI tried to recapitalize. In 2023, it issued $132.5 million in convertible notes. Later that year, Oaktree swapped its $436 million preferred equity into a $393 million senior loan plus stock. But these fixes only rearranged the deck chairs. By August 2025, TPI was drowning under $472 million in senior secured loans and $135 million in convertible notes. Meanwhile, major customers began setting off liquidated damages, draining cash. With liquidity evaporating, TPI filed Chapter 11 on August 11, 2025. To survive the process, TPI secured $82.5 million in DIP financing, $27.5 million fresh cash, $55 million rolled up old debt. But even this lifeline came with strings. $20 million was contingent on new supply deals with GE and Vestas. Now, pause for a moment. And imagine, what if TPI had made just a few different choices? What if, instead of relying so heavily on 3 customers for over 90% of its revenue, it had built a broader portfolio? One new contract, one fresh partner, could have spread the risk. What if TPI had held firm on take-or-pay contracts, those guarantees that protected them from sudden demand drops? Without them, the company carried all the risk. With them, the financial storm might have been survivable. And what if its exit from China, forced by subsidized competitors, had been balanced by a stronger expansion in India before cash ran dry? India's wind market is booming, but TPI couldn't fully capture it. The truth is, in industries like renewable energy, survival isn't just about being the biggest. It's about being the most resilient. Contracts, customers, cash flow, each one is a lifeline. And here's the lesson: growth without resilience is like building a wind turbine without a strong foundation. No matter how tall it stands, one strong gust can knock it down. So what can we take away from TPI's story? First, scale is not safety. Even when you dominate your industry, if your financial structure is weak, collapse can come faster than you think. Second, policy is unpredictable. If your business depends too heavily on government incentives, one new law or one sudden repeal can flip your fortunes overnight. Third, diversification is survival. When more than 90% of your revenue comes from just 3 customers, you're not in control. They are. TPI's story isn't just about wind blades. It's about business fundamentals that apply everywhere. Protect your contracts, balance your risks, and never confuse size with strength. For shareholders, the ending was brutal. Common stock will likely be canceled and ownership handed to the lenders. But for us, the audience, the ending is a lesson. Even giants can fall if they forget the basics. And this is why we study cases like this, not to laugh at failure, but to learn from it, because who knows? The next story could be about a company you admire today, or maybe even your own. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share so more people can learn from cases like this. And stay tuned, because in the next case, we'll uncover another rise and fall that carries equally powerful lessons.